So I remember way back when Thunderbolts came out, in the olden days of a year ago. We were so naive then. But like a lot of people were celebrating that an MCU movie was finally good again. Like there were plenty of people damning it with faint praise, but like a lot of people were actually just genuinely excited about it. Like it was a genuine cultural moment. A lot of people I know were really into the movie, not just in the sense that they liked it, but that they were into the fandom again. It made the MCU feel like it was alive and filled with potential and good, and good things were coming out of it. It felt like things were finally looking up for the MCU, and it was all because of Thunderbolts. And unfortunately, I think everyone was dead wrong. Sorry, Thunderbolts is just as mid as every other movie in the multiverse saga. It's like a 6 out of 10. I But yeah, hi, you can call me Lady Grayce. My pronouns are she, her, and welcome back to my show about the way that writing techniques make and break storytelling. Today, we're going to be talking about Thunderbolts, but really we're going to be using Thunderbolts as a way to talk about the three-act structure, which is a pretty basic tenet of the vast majority of Western writing, or at least in Hollywood writing. So I want to make it clear. I was actually really excited about this movie. Like initially I had the whole, oh, I'm sick of Marvel thing. I'm not going to be interested in a movie for a while, but like, I'm not going to be interested in a movie without a lot of good press about it. But like, even I got a little excited even before the movie came out. Like, I thought it had a lot of potential. Like, and also it was just like right up my alley. Like, it's a Suicide Squad like story about flawed anti-heroes and supervillains coming together to begrudgingly do something good. I fucking love that shit. It's about themes of mental health, which I really like seeing in media and also relate to a lot, which you may be able to guess from the fact that I'm a trans girl. So I probably have depression and or anxiety. But like, I think the thing that I actually took away as like the most potentially interesting was the idea that no one is coming to save you. All of the heroes are gone. It not only did it feel like an interesting setup, a bunch of has-beens, nobodies, and B-rank supervillains have to take down Superman essentially, but it's also like a really interesting meta-narrative topic in this era of the MCU. Like, Thunderbolts is a movie, but yeah, I thought this was a potentially really interesting subject. Like, it could have essentially tapped into the same vein as like the emotion that the end of history takes in you, like the idea that the main story is over, the heroes are gone, everything that was meant to happen has happened already, and you're just the people who are left. That taps into the meta narrative of the MCU, the place that it was after Endgame, the place that it still is after Endgame, very well. And it could have been something really interesting. It could have really pushed back that and been about how no, there is no end of history. Things just keep going. There's always another story to tell, and people will always rise to the occasion. And like they kind of do that, like a little bit. They don't do it a lot. They do it, they just don't do it very well, and it really disappointed me. Though I should also disclose that this might have been too up my alley. Like it might have gotten to the point where the feral alley cats living in my alley just had a really easy time ripping it apart because it was that up my alley. Like, this is something I'm going to talk about in some future streams, but I think sometimes when a story fits perfectly into like a category or a set of themes or a type of thing that you really like, it doesn't necessarily make you like it more. It just it sometimes just means that you're better at seeing the holes. Like you've seen these ideas or these plots or these characters done so much better somewhere else. So you just kind of can't see anything except the missed potential. And I love the Suicide Squad and Suicide Squad type stories. For example, did you know that that good Suicide Squad movies actually outnumber bad ones 3-1? There's Batman Assault on Arkham, there's Suicide Squad Hell to Pay, and obviously there's the James Gunn Suicide Squad movie, which is my favorite. And also, my standards might have been a little bit too high. Like, I might have allowed myself to get carried away with the fact that it was seemingly a good movie. And also, I kind of had just Oh, is it a good movie? Yeah, it's all right. It's like a 6 out of 10. It's fine. It's fun enough. Yeah. But yeah, I think my standards might have also been a little too high because there was this little thing where I kind of watched the first 2 Terminator movies the night before I watched Thunderbolts. So my standards for action movies might have been a little too high. And if that wasn't enough, I had also recently read Hellions by Zeb Wells, which is now one of my favorite comics ever. It's essentially X-Men Suicide Squad with X-Men characters, and it's so good. It will have you laughing right up until you start crying. I love it. And I had watched and read these 2 things pretty quickly before I watched Thunderbolts. So the deck might have been stacked against Thunderbolts because it probably wasn't ever going to live up to those things. So what now? Am I just coming on here to be like, popular thing is bad, it's mid, it's mediocre, and you're dumb if you liked it? Because actually, this was just as bad as I don't know, I didn't watch a lot of recent MCU movies. It's just as bad as The Marvels or Doctor Strange 2 or neoliberal Captain America, and you're a stupid idiot if you liked it. No, of course I'm not going to say that. That's a stupid asshole thing to say. Like, I've sort of said parts of these in streams before, but something I want to make really clear is that the reason media matters isn't because it perfectly fulfills the criteria of some arbitrary critics. Like, the point of media is that it affects you. Media is a conversation between the artist and the audience. If you derived emotional significance from this movie, if you loved it, if you even liked it, if it had an impact on you, that's great. That's the point of media, and no one can take that away from you. And if anyone tries to, they're an asshole. I don't want to just sit here and be like, hey, the thing that a lot of people liked, it's bad. I'm smarter than them. I probably wouldn't be talking about this if I didn't think there was a really useful nugget to find at the core of this movie's failures. So, the first review I ever saw of Thunderbolts right after it ever came out said that it was really good until the end of the first act, where we for some reason hit the finale. And I thought that review was a hyperbole. It was a joking way to say that the movie's kind of slow or has some pacing issues. I didn't expect that to be basically true. I have to say basically because I do think the movie gets a little further than the first act. I think it gets about halfway through Act 2 before the climax starts. But yeah, the climax starts before the movie is done. Sorry, the climax starts before the second act is done. And I think that's something worth going over and a good reason to remind you why the 3-act structure is important. So this is the beat sheet for the 3-act structure. This 1 through 6 are Act 1, 7 through 13 is Act 2, and 14 and 15 are Act 3. There's more elaborate versions of these, especially there's more elaborate Act 3s. And this one is from a very famous screenwriting book called Save the Cat. If you're interested in screenwriting, you've probably at least heard of it by now. And if you haven't, you'll hear about it now. It's a book penned by Blake Snyder, and if you take screenwriting classes, you'll probably read this at some point. And I think that the three act structure is very vague as written in this book, but I think that's kind of the reason it works. You can fit it pretty comfortably over most stories that exist, and it makes a very strong outline to build your story around if you're sort of lost for what to do, which I often am, and a lot of people often are, because it's kind of hard to figure out the shape of a story if you've never done it before. But yeah, no, it's also like better than a lot of other structures, I think, because of that vagueness. Like, for example, the hero's journey is something that occasionally gets a little too specific with some of its steps, and those end up feeling weird and unnecessary and kind of retro in a bad way, where they're like trying to be philosophical and actually just kind of feel a little sexist. Fortunately, Snyder Beat Sheet is not like that. The Snyder Beat Sheet is pretty good. I recommend it. And we're going to be going through it. First off, the opening image. This is the first shot of the movie. It's from the moment the film starts rolling to the first cut. Thunderbolts is actually an example that's kind of hard to show in a screenshot, because a lot of what makes this a good first shot is the gradual camera transition. It starts just on a picture of Yelena and slowly zooms out to reveal that she's on the edge of a building about to jump off of it. The purpose of the shot is to define it emotionally, either in context with the rest of the movie, especially the final image from the end of the movie, or just to provide a striking image that'll give you the emotional context to know what this movie is going to be like. In Thunderbolts' case, the emotional context is that this is probably going to dwell on themes of mental health, because Yelena is talking about how depressed she is while about to jump off a building. Then you've got the theme stated. This is meant to be a moment or a line that comes early that sets up what the core emotions at the heart of the movie is. It's not they don't necessarily have to state the theme outright. Like, most movies are more subtle than like Sonic 3, but yeah, this is actually an example of that, where Yelena describes her like feelings of depression as a void. It sort of hits that idea that the movie will later go on to extrapolate, where mental health difficulties is sort of a void that hollows you out, and you need people to be able to fill it with to help you. Then you've got the setup. This is probably most of the first act. Like, the first two are just tiny beats that the first act is supposed to hit. The setup is essentially the bulk of it. The setup is, what's the state of thing? Who is or who are our protagonist or protagonists? What are they doing? And what are they doing? In Thunderbolt's case, we get a good look at who Yelena is, what her life is, and how she's an assassin who is discontent with her life. We also get the catalyst. In this movie, the catalyst is Val, who's more or less the villain, is being investigated by the U.S. government and is trying to bury any dirty leads in her past. The inciting incident is the thing that gets the plot rolling. Yelena hasn't necessarily started participating in the plot, but this happens in the background, and it's going to be the driving thrust of the movie going forwards. Then, of course, we have the debate, which is the part of the movie where the protagonist questions their desires. You may also know it as refusing the call. Debate is a lot more vague and fits better, because the protagonist doesn't necessarily have to refuse the call. They just sort of have to question their place in the world. What do they really want? What's their goal going to be? How are they going to move forward? And do they want to engage with the plot as it stands? In Thunderbolts, this comes when Yelena meets with her dad, Alexei Red Guardian, and is like, you know what? I think I kind of want to stop being an assassin. I'm not really happy with it. And then, with Alexei's help, eventually comes to the decision that, hey, maybe I should try being a superhero instead. Maybe that will make me happy. And then, of course, you have the catalyst. You have the break into two. This is the protagonist's first major active choice. this is where the protagonist actively decides that they are going to engage with the plot. It's important that this comes as a choice because character is generally defined as choices. Like the way a dialogue is written and the way people talk about a character is also important, but we will most thoroughly feel a character's character, I guess, a character's deal, a character's gist, and a character's personality by the choices they make, by the way they drive the plot. It's also important because plot is determined by character. Like, if you were to swap out the main character of any movie you've seen with the main character of any other movie you've seen, the plot should become entirely different because entirely different people should be making entirely different choices. In Thunderbolts, this obviously comes when Yelena decides to accept her latest assignment from Val, which is maybe not the best idea, but it is an idea Yelena takes, with the caveat that she wants to be like more of a public-facing role after this job. And now, right about now, you might be thinking, I thought you said the movie breaks the 3-act structure. Like, I thought you said that the 3-act structure doesn't work. It sounds like it sounds like the first act has already hit like half an hour through the movie. Isn't this exactly what you want? To which I would say, yeah, this is exactly what I want up to this point. And it's gonna break right here. We've hit the breaking point with break into 2. Because unfortunately, we're not gonna get a second act, or at least not in the way that we should be getting a second act. And you might be thinking, why? And the answer is it's because of Yelena. Like, I love Yelena. Yelena's great. She's one of the only things I consistently like about the current saga of the MCU. Florence Pugh does an amazing job. Both Florence Pugh's performance and Yelena's writing somehow always manage to be great. And I don't understand it because even when she's in weaker content, Yelena is still amazing. But yeah, she's also the problem because this is an ensemble movie. This is meant to be an ensemble. It's Thunderbolts, not White Widow or Black Widow 2 or whatever you want to call it. So now we're all the way done with Act 1, and we haven't even introduced most of the ensemble. We've gotten one scene with Alexei that's mainly focused on Yelena anyways, and we've gotten one scene about Bucky where he's in it for like a minute before it focuses on Val, because Val is the important part. So now, you know what we've got to do? We've got to meet the rest of the ensemble. We've got to do a bunch of hard work establishing who these people are, what their deal is, where are they in their life, what do they want, how do they feel about the situation they've gotten into, how do they relate to each other, how do they start relating to each other, and what will drive them to decide to work together. Essentially, we need a whole other Act 1 just to cover all the ground that Yelena's Act 1 refused to cover. For the record, this is why the Suicide Squad tends to set up things very quickly. Like, most of them tend to just start with, here's the entire team, here's your mission, go do it. And the James Gunn one does have a couple of very quick scenes with Bloodsport, but right after those scenes, it moves immediately into, here's the rest of the squad, here's their deal, here's your mission. Because when you have all of this narrative space, all of this extra narrative space, it can be kind of difficult to fill a movie length. For instance, the B story, or the best B story, starts halfway through the movie after what should be the midpoint, going on a literal reading, after the Thunderbolts have already mostly teamed up and broken out of the bunker. The segment, so talk about B stories, I'm sure you've heard the term. A lot of films tend to have more than just 2 stories, but the B story in this structure is generally the second most important plot line, the one that will most pivotally reconverge with the main plot line, and it usually happens right after the first act is done, because now that we've done all the heavy lifting of establishing who the main characters are and what their deal is, we've got a bit more wiggle room now that we've hit Act 2. And the best fit for the main B story of Thunderbolts is the relationship between Bob and Val. It's very important. It merges back into the main story seamlessly. And it is actually focused on the characters, unlike whatever Bucky has going on, which is basically just catching him up to speed with the rest of the team. And this happens, it fits perfectly right after the first act. Unfortunately, the first act is halfway through the movie. So essentially, this comes after what should be the midpoint, as I previously said. Then we've got what should be the midpoint. And it's a perfect midpoint. Like, unveiling this entry and having him subsequently beat the shit out of the Thunderbolts is so good because the point of midpoints is to raise the stake. It's a turning point between where the story gets darker. It's where the story goes from being fun to being tense. It's where the heroes start from mostly winning to mostly losing. It ushers in the part of the next part of the beat sheet, which is bad guys close in. But by the time this hits, we're almost at the end of the movie. We're 2/3 in by the time we finally hit the Sentry stuff. So instead of having time for a proper bad guys close in, we're gonna have to transition straight into Dark Night of the Soul. And yeah, I'm gonna do something I don't usually do. Here's the 3-act structure. We start going through these 6 steps, and then we loop back around to do more setup and more catalyst and more debate, and then a break into 2. And then we've got the B story. Then we skip to the midpoint, and then after the midpoint, we skip to Dark Night of the Soul. We're skipping like 3 different points, and like, I know skipping 3 points doesn't sound big. The second act is the longest part of the movie. The second act is supposed to be half of the movie, while the first act and the third act are both meant to be about a fourth of the movie each. So even though there are less beats, those beats are supposed to take up way more time. We're essentially skipping over all of the meat in the movie so that we can hit all of the necessary plot beats and get to the finale without, ruining the runtime by making a 5-hour movie. So yeah, now we're at the Dark Night of the Soul, and the point of the Dark Night of the Soul is to react to the All Is Lost moment. The All Is Lost is the end of Act 2. It's when everything comes crashing down around the heroes. It's when everyone loses everything, you can kind of see that as the Sentry fight, like. The Thunderbolts did just get a beatdown, but it doesn't hit emotionally. Like, you can tell that it's forcing this moment to take the shape of a structure that it hasn't properly hit yet. So the Thunderbolts get out of Avengers Tower and they regroup, and Yelena decides, you know what? It's time for my All Is Lost moment. It's time for my Dark Night of the Soul. I hate you all, and I'm gonna go have a mental breakdown with my dad. And then Alexei gives her a pep talk or whatever. Okay, I've got a new chatter, and I don't know how to ban them, but that's a bot. Yikes. But yeah, so like, as I was saying, the shape can fit. Like, you can see the shape. Like if you look back and force yourself to look for things, you can be like, oh yeah, the escaping the bunker is the midpoint, and the chase scene is the bad guys close in, which makes the Sentry fight All Is Lost. But it doesn't feel like that because you kind of have to skip over all of a bunch of the meat, and you just kind of have to be like, I guess the meat is there if you squint. Like, that's kind of the bad part, or not even the bad part. That's kind of another feature of the 3-act structure. It's loose enough that you can force it to fit where it doesn't, but again, it really doesn't fit. And you know what the real problem with this is? We miss the fun part of the movie. Like, Okay, so point eight, fun and games, is both like the widest spanning beat in the beat sheet, and also one of the vaguest. Fun and games is the fun part. It's where you do the thing, and it's like it can be very unhelpful. Like it's very easy to be like, wow, this is just so vague that it can't possibly help me. But the way it was described to me, and the way it's described in the book, if you actually read it, uh, is fun and games is the promise of the present premise. It's what the thing says on the tin. Essentially, fun and games is where the thing you advertised goes. Like if you advertise this movie as a bunch of chaotic supervillains infighting and also having to work together to deal with their situation. This is where you're supposed to see that. This is where you're supposed to see all of the fun of these shitty people gelling together poorly and having all of their issues conglomerate and fuck over each other and make everything and like complicate all the action scenes. That's the fun part. That's why these movies are fun. Not only because you get to see a bunch of infighting in your superhero team, but also like the emotional appeal of a Suicide Squad story is that the main characters are allowed to be messier and more and failures and more human in a way that a lot of superheroes really aren't. Like, I think of that one scene in the Suicide Squad where Peacemaker shoots the driver of the armored prison truck they're in, and they have to try and drive the car through a bullet hole. Iron Man wouldn't do that. Iron Man wouldn't do that. It would, and the movie is so much better for being able to make these characters human and fuck ups. Like all of the fun part, all of the betrayals, all of the dick measuring contests, all of the main characters being kind of losers who fuck things up or do stupid things. That's the fun of these stories, and it's supposed to go here. But because the structure is so wrong, it just doesn't fit. So, does anyone have thoughts? Because if you don't have thoughts, I do believe that I have thoughts. I'm just. I had thoughts, and now they're gone. Well, it's been good talking to you about this. I hope you learned something about the 3-act structure, those of you who watched, and to those of you who will watch in the future, I hope you had a lot of fun. Next time, I'm going to be talking about the Amazing Digital Circus finale. Next week, next Friday, I'm going to have a whole thing about it, specifically the finale, because I made the mistake of watching the Amazing Digital Circus over the weekend, and now over last weekend after my last stream, and now my brain is consumed by thoughts of the evil purple rabbit. But if you want something a bit lighter and easier, a bit less structured, on Monday, I'm also going to be doing a ranking stream, ranking every Kingdom Hearts game. You should also check that out. It'll be a lot of fun. I'll bring a lot of my writerly expertise to it. But yeah, until then, I hope you had fun. I will see you all on Monday.